We should have a big
All right.
crowd tonight after I promoted it on the announcements last night.
I know, you did good.
All
Hurry
right,
up.
we should be live streaming. Can you confirm that, Devin?
I'm checking right now. There's usually about a 60-second lag time. We are live streaming.
All right, then we are good to start this meeting. We'll call to order this Monday, May 18th, 2020 meeting of the Tecumseh Public Schools Board of Education. First up, we have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Becky Brooks. As soon as I get the flag up there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, to start our meeting off today, we have good news from Mr. Rick Hilderly.
Yeah, really nothing formal here. Principals Appreciation Month kind of came and went in April with very little notice because of the drastic changes that we were going through in education. But quite honestly, the building principals in Tecumseh, and I'm sure lots of places, are some of the hardest working people currently employed. They spend a lot of time not only in the present in terms of joining meetings and popping into classroom meetings and having administrative team meetings with me, but also as we try to look over the horizon and forecast what next year might be like. They're all accessing skills that really are developing in real time. And I just wanted to take a moment publicly to share my thanks and appreciation for all of the work that they're doing and really not exactly knowing what the rules are. And we make things up as we go, and we clean up messes when we make them. And they're all putting a large amount of effort into making sure that our students are getting what they deserve and will get down the road the education that they have coming as well. So just a public recognition of the work that they're doing and will continue to do for the district. Thank you so much to the principals. I hope you're watching tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Rick. What brings us to our public comment on agenda items only. We do have a guest for public comment here. Let me get them in the meeting. And as soon as they are up, there he is. Good evening. Can you hear us? Good evening. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the public comment. The floor is yours. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, and I will let you have your public comment.
Hello, my name is Scott Purdy. This is my wife, Kayla Purdy. I prepared a statement, so hopefully you can hear me throughout. I know that you have a vote coming up for the reconfiguration. I've been at a couple of these board meetings. I'd like to start by saying that I applaud the commitment that Mr. Hilderly has demonstrated, in which my family has been able to experience firsthand. And I'll try to be very direct with these statements. At the last board meeting, Mr. Simpson said he does not want the board to be perceived as wishy-washy if the reconfiguration is not carried out in the coming year. I've stated on record that a reference letter from a group of teachers does not support reconfiguration, certainly not within a 1-year time frame. MCL 15 tag 342 section 2 subsection 2, a public officer or employee should not represent his or her personal opinion as that of the agency. Only 18% of the community surveyed supported the proposed configuration that was adopted by the board. As of the last board meeting, there wasn't even a consensus about the original cost and or financial benefits actually add up to be. The decision does not even need to be conducted until June 1st. President Johnson, on record, said there's no sense in doing anything incompletely. Last board meeting, Mr. Simpson said that he was concerned about ensuring the board maintains checks and balances in relation to the superintendent. The majority of this community does not want reconfiguration to even happen. Teacher quality is what will retain the students. Your teachers do not want reconfiguration to happen. I am truly interested in hearing how members of this board are going to vote, because it will show me who the priorities really concern. You have a second opportunity with this vote, and it is going to solidify where your priorities are.
All right, thank you very much. Would your wife like to add anything? I'm not sure if she was turning the camera to add or.
Nope, he said it all.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll take your voice into consideration.
We hope.
And I will, if you have nothing further, then I will put you back in the waiting room where you could stay, or you can leave the meeting if you like then and watch it on YouTube, your choice.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Have a great night. There we go. All right, that brings us to our board agenda. First up, revisions and approval of agenda. Are there any revisions? Or can I get a motion to approve the agenda as written, please? Mics are all unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I move we approve the agenda as written.
Support.
Roll call vote. Suzanne?
Aye.
Becky?
I can't hear her.
Yes or no? Becky's a yes. Milt?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Kevin is an aye.
It finally
Agenda is approved
unmuted,
as
so
written.
aye. I don't know why it stayed on.
All right, thank you, Becky. Next up, we have scheduled reports. Mr. Hilderly is up again with a district reorganization report. Mr. Hilderly?
Yes, first of all, had a public comment in any of our virtual meetings, so well done, Kevin. And I know, Devin, you're there in the background, so great job in making sure that that went well. Thank you. I provided a memo with my recommendation on the issue of reconfiguration, and I won't read it word for word, but there are some talking points in it that I want to stress in making this recommendation. First of all, the primary goals that I am trying to focus on currently and will be continuing to focus on moving forward through the next several weeks. So my recommendation is a partial implementation of the reconfiguration plan with these guiding principles. First of all, keep as many students in the last building they were familiar with as possible. I've heard this and I believe that it's very important that when we are able to come back with face-to-face instruction at some point. And I believe that we will be able to do that at some point during the 2020 and 21 school year. When we do that, this plan assures that except for one group, that would be the current 8th graders who would naturally move to the high school, the rest of them would be staying in the building that they were most familiar with when the pandemic put us out of school last March. Next, focus the majority of our time and effort this summer on the training and preparation of teachers for distance learning with, of course, increased rigor, and the planning of new safety protocols in the event of a return to face-to-face instruction. That process is going to take an enormous amount of our time. Next, increasing the capacity of all families to engage in online instruction. Later, I will talk about a process that we are involved in now that is going to try to gather some information and provide an opportunity for members of our staff to help us plan what next year might look like. And some of the information we're going to need in detail is families who are not able to engage currently with online instruction. We need to find that out and we need to address it. We want to try to reduce anxiety in students while increasing their potential for success, regardless of what our instructional platform is. We want to develop sensible curriculum and delivery decisions in all of the areas. And we obviously need to consider the realities of a significantly reduced budget. And all the while promoting our unique readiness for virtual learning to all area families. Our virtual academy is well prepared to make offerings to maybe families who aren't choosing Tecumseh at this time. And we want to ramp up our promotion of those activities. I recommend the following items: that we would move 2nd grade to the ELCs as planned. The students would then roll up and remain in the building that they last attended. The current 8th grade students would move to Tecumseh High School, and the Herrick Park building would remain empty for the 2020 and 21 school year. The current 7th grade students would remain at West in the Patterson building for 8th grade. The staff would remain with them. Current 6th grade students would remain at Compass for 7th grade. The 7th grade program, the teachers would need to move to the Compass building, where they will eventually end up anyway. TPS administration will then have to revisit the staffing plan and make necessary adjustments. We had created a staffing plan based on the full move that we would have to take some time to look at where some of those moves could take place and where they wouldn't be able to take place at this time. Eventually, when students and teachers can return for in-person instruction, students will return to a place that's familiar with many familiar faces. It's critical that our efforts between now and when school does resume in whatever capacity, that we spend a lot of time in preparing teachers for whatever the landscape is in education. During our current continuity of learning plan, we addressed online instruction relatively lightly because of the parameters of the governor's orders. With increased rigor, with accountability, grading, tests, full attendance requirements, the online environment will look much different in the fall. And we need to spend time with staff to prepare them. The move would require us to also do that in an environment where staff members weren't entirely familiar with each other. This leaves staff members in their current relationships, current building leadership, grade level curriculum familiarity, And I believe that that gives them the strongest ability to be prepared and successful. We plan to make full reconfiguration the following year with the grade levels in the buildings that we eventually want them in. But at this time, my recommendation is to make consideration of the training needs of the staff and most especially the social emotional needs of our students. So those are my recommendations. Later, it will come up as an action item. And if there are questions, we can discuss them at that time.
All right, thank you, Rick. Let's move right on while I've got you unmuted to the LISD Shared Business Services Contract, which is our discussion item tonight. Could you present that, please?
You have also in your packet the shared services cooperative agreement that I believe it's been in place going back to 2011 and has been rolled forward year after year. The board asked me to revisit that and give a recommendation. My recommendation for the board to consider is that those financial services be brought back within the organization and not contracted out. There have been minimal financial savings, but in terms of value to the district, having a staff member who is the finance and budget director is of far greater value to me and could potentially actually begin to find ways to save money. One of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of meetings have been the details of all of the contracts that we currently have with other vendors and different organizations. An in-house budget director will help us make sure that we're paying attention to those detailed contracts. The services that they provide aside from the budget director, the payroll and accounts payable services is something that we would have to create positions for within our district, but potentially at a savings to the district. So that's my recommendation for your consideration. If you haven't had a time to look over the current agreement under which we operate between now and next meeting, you can come up with any questions. Or if the board sees fit and you want to move on this quickly, you can decide to take action on it this evening.
So I have a question. So your recommendation is to not renew that contract?
That's correct. My recommendation is to not renew the services contract with the ISD, but to create a position within the district for budget and finance services, and including our own payroll combined with accounts payable.
Okay.
That the services provided for payroll from the ISD is also something that that I could go either way on if we wanted to contract for just that service. That's not as impactful on the internal organization, but the budget and finance director is.
Do we have any numbers on what it's going to cost?
Currently, the contract is for about $250,000. I wouldn't project a large savings, but I wouldn't also want to go over that.
If I remember correctly, the contract ends the end of June.
June 30, yes.
How long do you need to fill that position?
I would expect that it's going to take several weeks. So going into July, we would have our budget set, but there may be a time when we would either have to extend the agreement for a few weeks until we had somebody on board, or just try to struggle along without it. I would suggest that we not do that we would just extend for a short period of time until we have a person on board.
Thank you.
So the quicker we make a decision, the quicker you can find someone.
That's true. If a decision is made sooner, then I can, get the posting together and begin the search. But I don't want you to rush. Like I said, we can, if we overlap the financial years, we can retain the services for a short period of time.
Well, we used to have Tom Emery, and he was our finance guy, and I mean it was always in house for years. I'm not sure what happened and why it went out of house, but I do like the idea of coming back into house.
I think that in 2010 or 11, it was considered to be a savings to the district. And it may have been, I don't know. I'm not sure what the finances were like at that time. But at this time, it's my recommendation that there's more advantages for that person to be our employee.
John?
Yes. So in my experience, I've found that most businesses, and we'll call the school a business for this purpose, are better suited to use an outside agency for payroll versus internal. If we did decide to make this change, my recommendation would be to use a third-party payroll service. And the quicker that we do that, the better. Most payroll services like to change at quarter end. So we would want to be able to have that third-party vendor up and running by July 1st, so they could start the new quarter fresh.
All right, I'd like to take a,
I think that the ISD would continue that service for us if you chose.
And
as
how
an a
much,
la carte item.
how much
You're
do they
saying the
charge
payroll
us?
alone?
How much does the payroll?
The
What's the
number, Tim,
payroll?
I'd have to grab that from them. I'm not sure how that, the 250,000 pieces out to each of the portions, because they have an FTE amount of what each person does and how many hours.
I think we need to probably know those numbers before we can
I agree.
make a decision on any of this. So, I mean, I want to see it in-house too. I definitely want to know what it's going to cost too. So before we vote on anything, so, and what we're going to pay these new people and what they're going to cost. So we can have at least a comparison. So.
Okay, Rick, you can, there's John. Rick, you can get those numbers out to the board members between now and the next meeting, so everyone has a good chance to look over it, correct?
Well, yes.
All right, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, if we could all stay muted and raise our hands to talk, because there's a lot of overlapping right now. The other thing that I was going to say is, yes, we could continue that service with them. But again, we would want to keep that service with them until the end of the second quarter or the third quarter at that point, and make that change at the end of the third quarter. So just something to think about. Payroll services typically want to make that change at quarter end.
All right, I will mute everyone here. I was waiting till we got to discussion and started stumbling over each other, which we've started doing. So as we move on through the discussion items, I certainly will keep everybody muted and we'll go back to the raise hand or wave, one of the two. Suzanne, you have your hand up?
So John, you're talking about companies like Paycom and stuff like that, right? All they do is payroll? Okay, that's what I thought. That's all I got.
All right, I'm going to unmute everybody for our action items. We have first up, action items are the board policies, the 1,000, 2,000, and 8450 as reissued. Could I get a motion on those items, please?
I make a
Hereby-
motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion, because the 8450 hasn't been revised yet, hasn't been reissued on the board docs. It was in my board packet. I haven't seen it.
They aren't published on the website until the board approves them.
Right, under board docs where we're doing the review, correct?
It's under review, not posted as policy yet.
Right, yep.
Has it been revised on board docs, or is it still as written at last meeting?
Still written as last meeting for review. Policies for board review 8420 is still the same as it was before.
This is 8450, if that
No,
makes
I'm sorry,
sense.
8450, I'm sorry.
All right, well, if someone would like to make a motion, we can approve the 1000 and 2000. And if there's questions about 8450 needing revisions, they may exclude that from approval.
I hereby move to approve the following board policies and bylaws. The 1000 policy series administration and the 2000 policy series program.
Is there
Second,
support?
support.
All right, roll call vote. Suzanne,
Aye.
Becky,
Aye.
Milt,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
motion, oh, Kevin, aye, motion passes. And I will make a motion to set aside action on policy 8450 until a future meeting.
Support.
Support? Suzanne,
Aye.
Becky,
Aye.
Milt,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Kevin, aye. Motion passes. Next action item is the date for the Truth in Taxation and Budget hearing.
Before we move on that, I have a question for Terry. Is this where we're putting in the 22nd? Was that correct?
If that's what you would like, or you can schedule a separate hearing the following last week of June if you would like, outside of your board meetings to do budget. But
So
it's
I-
normally the last meeting.
Okay.
It just has to be voted on that that's the date and time that you're setting.
Right. I just want to know the date that we had agreed
yeah.
on because there hasn't been a discussion on it. So
Right.
what date would you like that set for, Kevin?
Let's go for that last meeting. With the way the budget's shaping up, I think putting it off till the very last minute's appropriate this year.
Okay. And so is that the 22nd?
I do not have my calendar up.
1 second here. I've got one.
Yeah, that's the fourth
Yes.
Monday.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, Milt.
That's the fourth Monday in June.
Okay. It's 22nd it is. In that case, I hereby move to set June 22nd at 6:30 p.m. as the date and time for the Truth in Taxation hearing for Tecumseh Public Schools and authorize administration to publish this notice as required by law.
Support? Roll call. Suzanne,
Aye.
Becky,
Aye.
Milt,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Kevin, aye. Passes unanimously. Next action item is the 2020 and 2021 LISD budget resolution. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I hereby move that the Tecumseh Public Schools Board of Education approve the LISD budget resolution for the 2020 through 2021 budget.
Do we have support?
Support.
We'll give it to Milt.
meet him.
Roll call, Suzanne,
Aye.
Becky,
Aye.
Milt,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Kevin. Aye, passes unanimously. Next up is our last action item, the district reconfiguration, our amended timeline as presented by Mr. Hilderly tonight. Could I get a motion on that, please?
I hereby move to approve the recommendation of Rick Hilderly regarding the configuration of the district for the 2020 through 2021 school year as follows. Move the second grade program to the ELC buildings. Current 8th grade students move to the high school. Close East STEAM Center building for the 2020-21 school year. Current 7th grade students will remain at West for the 8th grade with staff remaining. Current 6th grade students remain in Compass building for 7th grade. Staff will relocate for 2020-2021.
Support.
Is there support? Discussion?
Yeah. We gotta raise our hand, right? Let me raise my hand.
The mic's open. Go ahead, Tim. If
Oh,
we
okay, I
start
didn't know.
talking on one another, we're
right.
going to move to that if we start talking over one another.
All right. Well, I mean, right now, we don't even know what this is gonna cost us. We don't know what our budget's gonna look like. I mean, we're talking, we could hit 1.7 million hit this year. You're saying, Rick, that the state's telling us from information you sent us, and maybe another 1.7 next year. And so I know that we are overstaffed in the STEAM centers. When you look at just just your core teachers to student ratio in the STEAM centers, you're anywhere from 20 to 22 students per teacher. And if we're really going to take this big of a cut, we've got to make some serious cuts. We can't be that overstaffed. And just moving the 7th grade over to Compass, we're still going to be overstaffed. Patterson's going to be overstaffed where the 8th grade is going to be. I mean, when you add up how many full-time teachers we have in those, full-time gym teachers in each building, music being co-taught, I think we need to have some special budget meetings, just like the city does, and really dive into this budget and have it open to the public on what's going on with the budget. Because I'll be honest with you, I hear that we're not going to get this funding, but I don't know where all our money's going. The financials we get we don't really break it out real well for us. But I think before we vote on this, that we need to have some budget meetings and actually know, all right, these teachers are going to be, in this segment, and these teachers in this segment. So we know what the cost is and what we can cut and what we can't. I mean, I got I asked for the busing contract, and right in the contract, it says they're not supposed to bill us if they don't give us any service. And they haven't been giving us any service except delivering the lunches. So I'd expect to be billed for that. But that's a lot of money, and we need to be looking at these things. And I agree, Rick, we need a business manager in here, a finance director that can be looking at all these things. But if we're going to be taking a $1.7 million hit this year and a $1.7 million hit next year, I think as a board, we need to come together and have some budget meetings and actually go through it and make some tough decisions on what we need to do. Because we're going to be sitting in the hot seat for it. Rick's going to be sitting in the hot seat. We're all going to be sitting in the hot seat, and the teachers are going to want raises. And if we're not making hard cuts, they're going to look at us and say, why aren't you making these cuts? So I think we need to have some budget meetings before we can make this decision on what actually goes on, because, actually moving everybody, it probably will save us more money than what we're projecting in cost. So I think we need to look at all those things instead of just making a vote here that we don't have all the information. And that's how I feel about it. So I'm a no vote because of that. I don't have enough information to make a good vote on this. And so I'm definitely a no vote. And I would like to see us have some budget meetings as a board, special budget meetings, so we can sit down and figure this out, because this is a lot of money, $3.4 million like that. So gone. And we've got to make some serious cuts. Probably gonna have to bring pay to play back if we have sports next year, if we have sports, if we have school, in school.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that we have, but we have to have some sort of plan. We just can't sit there and wait, because there's so much happening and not happening in Lansing, but we at least have to have a plan as to where we're going. And I support making these changes right now. And the superintendent can adjust and bring us the information as we go along. I mean, we don't even know when school's going to start, if we're going to, how many students we're going to have, how much money we're going to have. Is Lansing going to start dictating how our classrooms are sized or how our busing is handled? But I think we have to have a plan started.
Well, and that's why I'm
John?
saying, that's
Hang on a
what
second, Tim.
Yep.
Hold on. John was up next. I've got a list going in our chat of the order people put their hands up in. So let's go through that. And after we come back around, can you see that, Tim? The chat list?
No. No. I'll just put my hand up. You tell me when I'm up.
All right, John, you're up.
So we probably do need to have some budget meetings, but you can't start working on a budget without having your decisions made on the building reconfiguration, because that's the first piece. If you don't know where your kids are going to be, where your teachers are going to be, and where you need to bus kids, there's no point in having a budget meeting. You're missing the point on this one. The second piece of it is, I heard a lot of people last week saying that they wanted to do what's best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is to keep them in their current situation, their current school, with familiar faces, and disrupt their lives the least amount as possible. The other piece of this is it's the least intrusive thing that we can do right now, other than not do anything, which I don't think is best for anyone. So I support Rick's changes here. I think it's best for everyone. I think it definitely helps the budget, but the bigger thing is it helps the kids stay in a familiar place, and it also helps the teachers with having a less intrusive move. So I definitely support this change that Rick made.
Thank you, John. Milt, you were next.
Okay. I agree with John. I think we need to go with Rick's recommendation. They're the best, they're least intrusive. But I agree with Tim that we should have some budget meetings, but those budget meetings to me need to be led by Rick and his staff to tell us what he believes we should be going through and where the cuts need to happen.
Thank you, Milt. Becky, you're up.
There we go. I just say I like Rick's plan. I think it makes a lot of sense with the situation we're in right now. We absolutely need to work on the budget. That's why we have a budget committee, and I suspect we will be meeting frequently. I like Milt's idea that we need some guidance from Rick, what he's going to need, because we don't know where we're going to need it right now. We know we're not going to have a lot, but we don't know yet how, as Mike said, how this landscape is going to look to see where those funds are going to need to go. So that's my feeling on it.
Thank you, Becky. Tim, we're back around to you.
Well, like I said, I'd like a lot more detail in it on what the costs are. So I'm definitely a no vote. I mean, if we're really doing what's best for these students, we wouldn't be offering pre-algebra in 9th grade next year. And so that's happening next year. There's pre-algebra in the high school. I don't even know when that's ever happened before. But I think, you don't make a budget. You don't make a plan first, then make a budget. You make a budget first, then you make a plan off of that budget, especially when you've got to cut a lot of costs. So that's how you run the business. So that's my take on it. I can't vote for something where I don't know what the costs are going to be. So like I said, I'm a no vote. So,
All right, thank you. We're back to John.
Again, I've worked on quite a few budgets in my lifetime, and you have to understand the roadmap before you can start your budget. So without knowing where everybody's going to be, it's impossible to do a budget unless you're going to try to do 3 or 4 different budgets based on, where you're going to have things. But that doesn't make sense either. We've got so much stuff going on right now that we really have to give Rick as much quality time to work on the things that are important and not have him chase his tail. Trying to come up with 3 or 4 different budgets or even 2 different budgets, I think is a waste of Rick's time and energy and resources. So I think we make a decision and move on with that, because there's going to be so many things there's so many balls in the air right now that Rick's going to have to juggle, that adding something to it makes no sense to me. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Becky, we're back to you.
Kevin, I was just going to call to move the question.
All right, I will unmute all. We have a motion to move the question. Is there support?
Or
All right, roll call vote for the question. This is not the vote for the reconfiguration. This is a vote whether to end debate and immediately vote on the reconfiguration. So, Suzanne.
Wait, what am I voting on?
Right now, Becky has called the question. We are voting on whether or not to end debate and then take the vote on the reconfiguration.
Okay.
That is what we are voting on. So if you want to end debate and take the vote on reconfiguration, you would vote yes now. If you don't, you would vote no now.
Aye.
Okay. Becky?
Aye.
Milt?
aye.
Mike?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tim?
aye.
And Kevin, aye. We move on to the vote for the amended reconfiguration plan presented by Rick tonight. Suzanne?
Aye.
Becky?
Aye.
Milt?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tim?
No.
And Kevin? Aye. Motion passes 6-1. All right, next on our agenda, we have the superintendent's report. Give me just a second, Rick. I'm going to mute everyone and unmute you. All right, Rick, you're up.
All right, thank you. There are a couple of bullet points on your agenda and a few more that I'll add in. First of all, President Johnson asked for some information about GASB 84, which GASB is an acronym, GASB. It stands for Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And 84 refers to a statement that came out in 2018 about governmental accounting standards. And because schools are essentially governmental agencies, then aspects of that statement have to do with schools. In this case, it has specifically to do with what have always been referred to as activity accounts. And those activity accounts can include PTO, special fundraisers, sports teams and their activity accounts, all of those things. For years, those accounts stood outside of the district's general fund and were not part of the yearly audit. The GASB 84 statement and ruling says that now those funds must be part of either the general fund or a special fund under the guidance of the school district. So essentially, all of the money that comes and goes throughout the district has to be audited the same way. So it requires training, and Kevin has asked about training not only for the administration, but for the board. There are 2 groups that we work with quite closely, and one that we're a member of, one that we retain. The Michigan Association of School Boards has a training platform for GASB 84, as does Troon. our school's law firm. So either of those would be adequate for bringing information to the board and also making sure that the administration is up to date on those accounting practices. And I'll be happy to bring forward either one of those at any time. It's been in place since September of last year, so we're relatively familiar with it, but certainly making board members more formally aware of it would be very appropriate. Next is childcare program. We've made a statement that the childcare program is down for the summer. However, there are some circumstances coming up in August where we may have some flexibility to provide childcare for frontline workers. We will explore that as we get closer to that time. But Joanne Leip has advised me that they would be interested in being a part of that, but we don't know just exactly how that would work. I have said, and I'm throwing a blanket statement out there, that we're not doing the child care program this summer, but there is some circumstances under which we could provide those services. So I just want to advise the board that you may hear more about this later on. This item actually could have come up under good news, but I want to advise the board and anybody watching, the local radio station WLEN has offered 15 minutes of airtime free to each district to have graduation speeches. And we are in the process of recording those. I did my recording today. Mr. Mills has an introductory statement, and then we have our class president, our valedictorian and salutatorian, who are all speaking. And then I have a couple of minutes of closing comments in that 15-minute window. They don't know exactly when that's going to air, but we will be promoting it to the district, and I'll inform the board members when they have their schedule out there. All of the districts in Lenawee County are being given a specific time to listen. So that was a very nice, I think, community outreach thing that WLEN did for the county. I want to announce that our distance learning action team is being put together this week. We met administratively today. Jacob Anastasov has done a nice job in coordinating that effort. We're going to enlist the help of staff members to design what school might look like. I think it's most assuredly going to involve some version of online instruction. And we've learned a lot about things that have gone well through this continuity of learning plan. And we've learned things that we would like to do differently, certain ways that we want to organize our materials, and then also the gaps in training that everybody is going to have to fill. So we will have another meeting tomorrow to complete that organization process. And then we're calling this week 0 as we get ourselves prepared. And then we'll start those meetings next week with staff broken down into different categories. Once we have that process organized, I'll share that information with board members. And then I mentioned the Building Futures Committee last week. I didn't have the specific date. June 2nd is the first date of the Building Futures Committee. It's followed very closely after that with another meeting on June 9th. We know right now that the June 2nd meeting will be a virtual meeting. It's introductory and gives people an overview of what the task of the group will be. So I think that holds pretty well in the virtual environment. And then we will make decisions about how we might approach an in-person meeting in ways that we could distance people in a large space. So moving forward with it right now, and we'll see how it goes meeting by meeting. I think that's it for my report. Thank you.
Now all mics are on. We move to our consent agenda. Could I please get a motion for the consent agenda?
I hereby move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the following items. Minutes from the regular board meeting, May 11th of 2020.
Support.
Roll call. Suzanne?
Aye.
Becky?
Aye.
Milt?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Kevin, I passes unanimously. Items scheduled for the next agenda. We have discussion items, the 2020 and 2021 draft preliminary budget projections. The math department report. Action items include the food service contract extension for next school year. And that brings us to our public comment section. We had no registrants for the closing public comment section. Brings us to board member comments and discussion. Are there any board member comments or discussion? John?
Are we gonna have the shared business contract next board meeting or no?
I think we should.
Right now, it is not on the preliminary, just the draft of the budget projections. We can certainly add it to it.
I think it'd be a
Terry?
good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you write that down, Terry?
I did, and we'll get you that budget information, Rick, and then we can have it on for.
There
action.
was a 3-week gap this time between.
You're right.
So plenty of time to get you the information.
Yeah.
And answer questions.
All
I
right,
just have
John,
not
you were
yet.
up next.
Yeah,
John?
I'd like to see that on there. I'd like to see a preliminary, just a real basic budget of what Rick's thinking for staffing costs for that. And I would be happy to reach out to some payroll services. I've got some contacts at different payroll services. So if I have the amount of paychecks that we cut and how often we cut them, I can start working on that piece of it.
All right, Tim?
I just, Rick, I know you and I spoke earlier in the week, so, or was it the last week? Was it last week?
Yeah.
I don't even know what week it was anymore, so.
Okay.
Did we figure out anything with the busing? Because I mean, we got the contract and it says that we're not supposed to be paying them. They're not supposed to be billing us. And you and I talked about
The items that they're billing us for are related to payroll. We committed to pay the employees under the agreement of the executive order. We were encouraged to do that, and we did so. We haven't been billed for athletic trips and runs that wouldn't have taken place. The drivers were each given an average of their weekly income, and that's what the district was billed for. If there's more detail, and also that would include part of the director's salary as well. General maintenance on the buses has continued. They've done some recall seating updates and things like that. So I can certainly get an itemization of what it is that we've been billed for, so that we're sure that we haven't gone past any of those things.
And then what about the other contractors that we have and so forth? Have you made a decision on that, or?
In terms of making any layoffs?
Right.
No, we have food service, and then we have a list of a variety of other employees, some of whom are ours and some who are not, with just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks left in the payroll year. I haven't made any other recommendations. Again, the guidelines of the executive order were to pay your employees, and that's what we've committed to.
Well, there was a Q&A right after she issued that executive order, said you didn't have to pay contract employees. So, so it was next day or two after that, because there's a lot of questions about that. So,
Right. Most districts have chosen to follow through with their contract payments.
John?
As far as food service goes, are we going to continue to offer food service if the lockdown stays in place for another 30 days? Have we?
Right now, we're committed to serving the food through the end of June. That's
Okay,
that they've assured food service that they will be reimbursed for.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other board member comments or discussion?
I've got one more.
Yeah.
One of the things that's happened throughout this pandemic is we've seen, a lot of employers, small businesses, employees, things like that have had opportunities to remain fairly whole. Small businesses have had the PPP loans, employees and workers have had unemployment. And as Tim mentioned before, and I agree with, there's a lot of people on unemployment right now who are making more money than they would have not working. So I'm really struggling with the fact that the state is going to be cutting our funding because it seems like everyone else is, at least I know everyone's not whole, but the opportunity to remain close to whole is available to the people that want to take advantage of it. And I don't understand why the state is choosing to punish the schools while everyone else isn't. So I think we really need to reach out to our representatives and we need to get the public involved, and we really need to make our voices heard as a community and as a state, to the representatives in Michigan that make these decisions to know that, this isn't acceptable. We cannot be cutting our school funding and our school programs to our kids while everyone else is having opportunities to, remain somewhat whole. So I think we need to do something about that if we can to get our voices heard.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, John. I mean, if anything, but we need to also maybe get together as a board and put a letter together to our representatives and to the governor, who promised more money to the schools. She's taken more away, not to mention taking money out of the current year budget that's already been spent.
Right.
The other thing that we really need to get out into the public is the bond issue that we talked about before. This is an opportunity for the community to come together and, help the schools when we're going to desperately need it. And it's still going to lower their property taxes. I mean, it's not a huge lowering of property taxes, but I think if I remember correctly, it was like 2.3 or 2.6 mils that it would still lower, even with supporting the schools with a bond issue. So I think that's another thing, with all the other balls that we've got up in the air that we're juggling, we need to get that information out there so the public can, come together and support the schools.
All right. Thank you very much. Last call for board member comments and discussion. All right. We are at our adjournment. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Support.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.